camera.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, left camera, but you've got yourself on the right screen.
So if I just want to see my screen.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And the number of programs that we're using that I'm seeing on the big databases is incredible for watching.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it looks like a few people are still trickling in, but let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our third and final webinar in our Law School and Legal Career Series. My name is Justine Ross, and I'm the Associate Director of the UCR Presley Center of Crime and Justice Studies. And we're joined today by our co-hosts, the Riverside County Bar Association. Today's event will focus on the day-to-day of practicing law. So our prior two events focused on preparing yourself in undergrad to apply to law school and what law school is actually like. And today we're taking a jump, letting you peek into your future and hopefully shed some light on what this career actually would look like for you. If you've attended prior events, welcome back. You've heard my full spiel then about the Presley Center, so I'll keep it brief this time around. We are a research center that is housed within the UCR School of Public Policy that, as our name suggests, focuses on issues related to crime, justice, and rehabilitation, particularly in our region. You can visit our website, presleycenter.ucr.edu, to learn more about our research and student programming. In addition to research, we're also interested in developing professionalization opportunities for UCR students who are interested in law and criminal justice. Which is why we are here. And so we were elated when the Rcba agreed to partner with us on these events and on our new mentor meeting series that I know many of you have signed up for. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating no matter how trite it may sound at this point. We are so appreciative of the Bar Association's partnership with us. They've been wonderful collaborators, willing to pilot new programs with us when we don't really know what's expected at that point, and they've just been along for the ride and have really made these a success. So if we were in person, this is probably the point that I would pause for applause from the audience, but since we are not, I'm going to just go ahead and pass it straight along to the president of the Rcba and Deputy District Attorney, Sophia Choi.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sophia Choi. Thank you, Justine, for all those kind words. Like Justine said, this is the last and third segment of our spring webinar series with UCR School of Public Policy. So I'm a bit sad this will be my last time introducing myself, but hopefully we'll be doing something similar to this moving forward. Like Justine mentioned, we are doing a mentorship thing, or a one-on-one mentorship session. Call it office hours for students, and it's already filled up. We have 142 students signed up. So if you have not had a chance to sign up and the slots were filled, please contact me or through Justine or directly to me if you wish. You can find my contact information at www.riversidecountybar.com. And we also have an Instagram page at RivCoBar, RIVCOBAR. So if this is your second or third time joining us, or if it's your first time joining us, welcome. And Riverside County Bar Association, very briefly, is a group of attorneys and judges. We have over 1,000 members, and we hope you will also be joining the Riverside County Bar Association very soon. So thank you and enjoy today's webinar series.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm going to turn it over now to Goshi Farouk, the president of RCBA's Barristers.
Good afternoon, everyone. As indicated, I'm Goshi Farouk. I currently am a family law attorney at Bratton Roswell & Lord. I'm also the president of the RCBA Barristers. The Barristers is an organization under the RCBA for younger or newer attorneys pursuant to our bylaws. If you are an attorney who is 37 years old or younger, or within your first 7 years of practice, you can be a member of the Barristers. If you are a RCBA member, you automatically are a barrister. However, you can come to any of our events, even if you don't fall within those parameters. The goal of the barristers is to provide a great platform for newer and younger attorneys to meet, get to know one another, create networking opportunities, and also build lasting relationships and friendships. We have several upcoming events. I'm actually very happy to announce that we have our first in-person event scheduled for May 17th at 5:30 p.m. at Retro Taco. We're doing a hike at Mount Rubidoux on May 15th at 10 a.m. And then we're doing a virtual scavenger hunt on June 17th at 5:30 p.m. And you can RSVP for that at rcbabarristers@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at RCBA Barristers and same handle for Instagram. I encourage you all to come to Barristers events, reach out to me. Justine is welcome to give out my email address to all of you. Would love to meet you at a future event just to get to know the legal community and come participate in our events. And I wanted to thank Justine for having me at the last two presentations and today. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, and I hope you enjoy the webinar today.
Thank you, Goshi. So just quickly going to go over some logistics for the event for attendees. So you know each panelist will have roughly 13 minutes to talk about their experience practicing law, maybe their career trajectory, hopefully giving you something to think about that's not just what we've seen on TV, which I think depicts probably the more glamorous and fast-paced side of practicing the law. So during their 13-minute presentations, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, not the chat feature, to submit your questions. And you should submit questions as they come to you. Feel free during the presentations. At about 1 p.m., we will switch to the Q&A, and that's when we will start reading off your questions that you've submitted, and our panelists will be able to answer them live. I think that's it. We're getting a bit of an early start, but that's great. It gives our panelists more time. So with that, I'll introduce our first speaker, Daryl Exum, live from Judge Staman's chambers with Exum Law Offices.
How are you? First off, I guess the first thing I probably want to say is, you know, I've been doing this for about 30 years. So let's first start with this. I want to make sure that none of you make the same stupid mistakes I made. And the way to do that is this. Understand that the day-to-day practice of law requires you to do two things. You need to think about who you are every day. I can't post the things I sometimes want to post on the internet. I can't do some of the things I sometimes want to do because I remember I took an oath to stand up for this country and to abide by the laws and to enforce the laws to the extent that that's what lawyers do. And it does prohibit you from doing things. Now, do attorneys get in trouble with the law? Of course they do. But as an attorney, you're held to a higher standard. You're going to hear that so many times, that you're held to a higher standard. Now, when I get up in the morning at 3:15 to work out, I do sometimes work out, and sometimes I think about my day. And this is what I do. I think about what courts I'm going to go to, what judges I'm going to go to, where I'm going to go. And it might seem silly, but the more you do work on what you're going to do for the day, the easier your day becomes. And what you find is when you do the kind of work I do, trying cases, you know, I've had a great vacation during the pandemic where I haven't had to try a lot of cases, although I've tried a few misdemeanors and I am undefeated on misdemeanors, but just misdemeanors. I've tried over 280 jury trials in mostly, and believe it or not, mostly in Riverside. And what that really means is that I have been in front of a jury picking 12 people to sit on a case over 200 times. Now, it seems glamorous like on television, but it's not. You have to decide early on that you love this, because if you don't, it will burn you up. For me, as a person who's done this 30 years, I wake up every day and I am so grateful because I can't believe people pay me to do what I do. I love what I do. Now, the hard part about what I do, that's the great part, getting to try cases, getting to come to court in front of judges who are nice, being honest, you know, those are great things. Talking to younger lawyers about how to be a better lawyer, those are great things. Now let's talk about the part that isn't so great. The part that isn't so great is clients. I know you're saying, well, shouldn't the clients be great? But that's not true, because when you do criminal work, you are besieged with human drama every day. Well, my client's looking at the death penalty. My son's never been to jail. Hey, my son didn't do this, but he's on video doing it. But, it's his first time. It's a serious offense, but, it's his first time. He should go free. I saw a guy on TV get a great deal. How come you can't get that deal? And this is what you're besieged with. And so part of being a lawyer is being a social worker. And anyone who tells you otherwise isn't really being honest, because we have to talk to people, help them understand what it is that's going to happen. And remember, and this is a sort of a universal thing, and it took me a while to figure it out. And I want you to know now, before you go to law school, under promise, over deliver. I'll say it again, under promise, over deliver. Do you know how many times as a younger attorney I over promised and under delivered? Well, every time I did, I had clients who looked at me and said, "You're terrible, you're awful. How could you do this to me?" So that's what we do as lawyers. Now, every day I like to go through, I like to study a little bit. I just even if it's only for 10 minutes a day, the law, because it's constantly changing. And what it does is this: they don't call it the practice of law for no reason. They call it the practice of law because you never get it. 30 years and I don't have it yet. And that's the truth. And once you learn to accept that, you will be a much better lawyer. The best prosecutors are the ones who care about what they do, and it's not just a job. The best defense lawyers are the ones who care about what they do, and it's not just a job. And when they meet, it's always fireworks, but that's what we do. So what I will tell you is this: you can be friends with whoever you want. A lot of people think, well, on TV, the police never hang with the prosecutors and the prosecutors never hang with the defense attorneys. But no, that's not true. Not true. I once actually married a prosecutor, believe it or not. And I have friends who have dated attorneys who date from different sides. This is a job. No matter how much you believe it's a mission, it's a job. And let me explain what I mean by that. This will tear you up if you make this your 24/7. You can't make this your 24/7, no matter how much you love it. Now, that's the part that took me 10 years to figure out. So I want to make sure you don't, because this is what it will do. You want to lose 30 pounds? Get vested in your clients 24/7. You'll lose 30 pounds. You want to go gray early? Work on your cases all the time. Devote your weekends. You want to be lonely and not have dates? That's how you do it. And so what I'm telling you is have a life. Have a life. So what I decided to do after about 10 years of practice was I figured it out. I was like, you can't reinvent the wheel. There are very, very, very good lawyers out there who will talk to you, who will tell you how to do it. So don't have to reinvent the wheel. One of the things I do is I talk to younger lawyers, but more importantly, I talk to other lawyers who have more experience than me or experience in other areas, because there's no point in me researching a 50-page motion when 5 people have done it before. I can just do, and this is the sort of the statement that I say applies to all lawyers, and a lot of lawyers don't agree. Genius borrows, brilliant steals. All lawyers take from other lawyers. Don't ever think there's nothing new under the sun. You hear an argument from a lawyer, whether he knows it or not, whether it's from literature, whether it's from watching TV, whether it's from watching my favorite show about lawyers, The Practice, it's stolen. Now, whether they get credit or not is a whole different issue. And it's a rare lawyer, Abe Lincoln, who does things originally. It's a rare lawyer. So what I tell you is, look, this job will tear you up and destroy you. So here's what you do. My day, I told you, I start out by figuring out what's gonna happen that day. Then I figure out, and it took me years to get this, but guess what I do? I call the prosecutor, I call the court, just to let them know where I'm at. And it's amazing how now judges will say, Mr. Exum, you're always on time, or you call. I used to just show up, and judges would just show up and give me a ruling, and it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant. So what I tell you is, and remember, even doing that, you have to make a decision about what kind of lawyer you're going to be. I always said there were three kinds of lawyers. There's the journeyman, people who've been practicing for years and they just don't seem to get it, know what they're doing. Then there's the lawyers who are super competent, but they don't know how to handle their calendar. Now, I'll tell you, I always thought I was the third, super competent, handle my calendar, and in the top tier, but it was not true. And I'll tell you how you know that's not true. Look around at the lawyers in the courtroom. Who's running around? Who's always running around like a chicken with their head cut off? Those are the lawyers who haven't mastered their calendar. And it's a tough thing. And sometimes you're going to have days like that. But it's the getting up early in the morning, looking over your calendar and sort of figuring out what you have to do. Now, once you do that, this is what you do. Then you have more time to really devote to kind of understanding what your cases are about. And that's what I tell people. Listen, get a group together. Doesn't have to be all lawyers. It can be new lawyers, older lawyers, and also what you would call non-lawyers. Get a group together just to talk about your cases, just to talk about them. Because once you do that, you're going to find out that, one, the sad truth is, as a lawyer, and we learned this, and you're going to learn this in law school. If you saw an accident right now, you say, oh my goodness, someone was hurt. It's an awful. Once you've been practicing for about a year, the first thing you say when you see an accident is, who's at fault? I wonder if the car manufacturer, if something had to do with the car manufacturer. We're sort of trained to think a certain way, and we have to unlearn that thinking. And I would like everybody out there to understand that before you start law school, so that you don't get in that trap, because it is a trap. It forces you to think in a certain way and be less human. And if you're a trial lawyer, it's less human to juries. And you have no idea how many times I had to unlearn stuff just to talk to jurors. Because the reality is, the greatest cross-examiner in this whole group right now is probably one of you non-lawyers, because guess what? You meet people, you know, if you thought your significant other lied to you, you would cross-examine them, not having any legal training. And guess what? You do an excellent job. We are hampered by these rules. And once we learn to shed those rules, we can become free like we used to be, like you are now. So what I tell you is, listen, do exactly what all of these people are going to tell you in terms of how their day-to-day goes. But remember, have a life outside, because it's the life outside of the courtroom that's going to make you a better lawyer. It's not the life inside of the courtroom. I mean, when I sometimes get to talk to jurors, I can relate to them about current movies, current events. But there was a time where I didn't go to the movies. I didn't look at current events. I was so into my cases. It was all about my clients. It was all about trying to save my clients. When the truth is, you need to become a better person, a better parent, a better significant other, to be a better lawyer. And that's probably the bottom line of anything I could tell you today in terms of my day-to-day. I'm constantly striving to be a better person. Because this human drama is real. These people's lives are real, and it takes its emotional toll on you. And the only solace sometimes you have is that you did your best, that you went out, you studied, you talked to other lawyers, and you did your best. Because make no mistake, the trials that you see on television, absolutely, they look great, but they take about 10 minutes. When we go to trial, it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I once did one that was 6 months. It's hard to get yourself excited for a 6-month-long trial. It really is, every day. But you have to, because your client might be facing severe consequences, and you have to. And you know, the best thing you can ever do is now start trying to understand. I mean, if you think you want to be a trial lawyer, I have a friend who says, I want to be a trial lawyer. He's about to start law school. And you know what he said to me? But I can't sit down for more than 5 minutes and I have to stand up. I said, you're going to have some problems. Just letting you know, you're going to have some problems. Because in federal court, they don't like you to stand. They don't like you to stand. So you're going to have some problems. And in state court, sometimes when you jump up out of your chair for no reason, it's problematic to the deputy. He doesn't know what's going on. So, you got to know, and I would rarely ever say this, but you got to know where your lane is in terms of what it is you want to do. Trial work is only 20% of what I really do. The rest is being a businessman, being a social worker, talking to office staff, and your team is probably more important than anything. You need to put together a team of staff that will help you. And if you can't do that, what you're going to find is you're doing it all yourself. And if you start doing it all yourself, you burn out faster. The whole goal here is to not burn out fast and not to waste time by doing these things over and over and over again that have already been done. So I leave you with that. All about not reinventing the wheel.
Thank you, Daryl. I feel like regardless of whether you go to law school or not, that was a pep talk for every career in some way. So thank you for that. And I know that you'll have to leave at some point. So we thank you, obviously, for your participation, being willing to share with our students. Next up is Human Hosseinian with Riverside County District Attorney's Office.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wish I'd gotten that speech from Mr. Exum before I went to law school. It would have definitely made a lot bigger difference in my day-to-day operations. He's absolutely right. Things that we do on a daily basis, weekly basis, it's not necessarily practicing law. It's, talking to people, figuring out, what cases are, talking to victims, talking to witnesses, working with police officers, different agencies. But Mr. Exum's right. You have to have a life outside of this practice to have a better understanding of what it is you're practicing. Immerging yourself into books and the law, it's fantastic. It's great to be the smartest person in the room. But if you can't see, the tree for the forest and you can't see what's going on in the courtroom and you can't see what's happening with your witnesses and you can't read people, it doesn't matter how smart you are in that courtroom because you're missing it. And, and you can't teach that, unfortunately, to anyone. It just comes with life experience. And I can't speak for the other panelists, but, when I went to law school, it's not like going to medical school. When you come out of medical school, you've taken all the classes, but then you're required to do, like an externship. You got to go work with other doctors and you got to, practice things before you can go out and be on your own. Lawyer is not the case. You come out of law school, you pass a bar exam, and you are technically licensed to practice law without ever touching a case before. And to be honest with you, I did that when I came out of law school. I got sworn in on Monday. I was doing special appearances that afternoon. Was it the smartest thing to do? Absolutely not. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but nonetheless, I feel like I'm doing more now than I did back then. And, that's one of the biggest problems, I think, with law schools, that they don't really prepare you for what's really, real life, the people behind the cases, the case law, the police reports. There's actually people behind it. And, that's, I think, the hardest part to learn as a lawyer is that there's all this other stuff going on. If I went to I was a history major in undergrad because, I talked to other lawyers and, a lot of people advise me, hey, try to pick a major that, has a lot of reading and a lot of writing, because that's basically what you're going to be doing in law school. And I looked around and history seemed like a fantastic, undergrad. Looking back on it, I wish I take something in like sociology or psychology, something where it teaches me how to better interact and better understand other beings, because, practice of law is practice of humanity, I think, of sociology, of knowing, what you have, every case is different. Mr. Exum's right. The difference between Mr. Exum and myself, he has a client, he has someone that is, has come into trouble and he has to deal with it. I don't have that situation. My job is to do the exact opposite. And my job is to come into court and hold that person responsible. There's a disconnect from what's happening with that person's life. I have no idea if that person's going to lose their job over the prosecution that I'm pushing. Are they going to lose family? There's a lot of other things going on in the background. Could they get potentially deported? There's a lot of other things that go on in the background that as a prosecutor, we don't get to know about unless it becomes an issue and, you know, the defense attorney or somehow that information is provided to us. And I think that's where it's the hardest part is behind these cases, behind these numbers, behind these names, there's actually humans. And I think that's one of the hardest parts as a beginning lawyer is that you don't really realize that. And I think the most important thing as a beginning lawyer was to have, you know, like Mr. Exum, you know, lawyers that are experienced to come talk to kind of reference things, you know, to bounce things off of, you know, having that kind of community behind you is necessary with these kind of cases. And unfortunately, law school doesn't prepare you for that. You know, they don't give you, you know, a resource book when you get sworn in saying, hey, if you get in trouble or if you don't know what to do, call this lawyer. He can help you. Unfortunately, they don't give you that. And you have to go out and you have to do your own networking and you have to find, you know, lawyers and people that you trust that can give you guidance. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, it's not just lawyers. You can go to other places like the Bar Association. There's other referrals. You know, there's a lot of different places that you can find help with, you know, with these kind of things. But the most important thing is realizing that behind all this practice of law and what's happening in the movies and the shows and everything like that, it's completely different in the sense that there's real people, there's real lives. You know, criminal is different. You're looking at, you know, losing your freedom, and civil is different. You can be looking at losing potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, potentially bankrupting a company. So there's potentially a lot at stake. And I think a lot of the beginning lawyers kind of miss the aspect of that there's humans behind that. There's emotions, there's a lot more stuff going on. And I think Mr. Exum hit it on point in that, you know, you have to, the more information you have about these things and realizing that the practice of the law is not what you see on TV every day. That's not what we do every day. That there's a lot more going on. I think Mr. Exum was right. I think what you see on TV is probably 10%, 15% of what we do on a regular basis. Otherwise, we are doing substantially other stuff. And that other stuff is this humanity aspect of trying to figure out, you know, what's justice for my victim, and same thing for Mr. Exum. What is the best resolution that I can get for this client based on what he has on his, you know, and we have different goals, but behind each of those goals, there's a human. I have a human victim on my side and Mr. Exum's got a client. So I think for lawyers, as you're going through your career, being able to understand that there are actually humans behind these things, that there's a lot more going on, a lot more moving pieces, I think that will make you a better lawyer. You know, as prosecutors, you know, I can't speak for my entire office. These are just my views, but I think as me personally, I think I've become a better lawyer in the sense that I now understand and see that there are other things going on, and there are substantially other collateral damages to what I perceive as punishment and justice for, you know, victims of crime. And, you know, as you gain experience and your career moves up, unfortunately, you deal with, you know, more serious cases, and with more serious cases comes more emotions and comes more collateral consequences. So, you know, those are not just something that, you know, the people involved in the case and their families bear, but that's sort of, and that what Mr. Exum was saying is that you got to keep your sanity. That starts bearing on you. These, you know, what the family's going through, you almost through osmosis start going through some of that stuff, some of those feelings. And, you know, and it's hard to disconnect. I mean, I don't know a single lawyer that can just completely disconnect and not have any kind of emotions or feelings when they're trying to tell a family that, you know, their child is going to be locked up in jail for a long time. I just don't know how you can not get personally involved and emotional with those things. So I think those are the things that are the hardest to learn and the hardest to understand, but that I think only comes with time and, you know, trying to speak with lawyers like Mr. Exum that have been practicing for so long and getting these insights and trying to get an idea of what the real practice of law is. It's not what you see on TV.
Great, thank you so much. Now we have Lori Myers with the Law Offices of Lori Myers.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Perfect. I just wanted to introduce myself. I am a criminal defense attorney for the last 17 years. So when I speak, just keep that in mind. That's my perspective and experience and where I'm coming from. I know Mr. Exum left and he is doing some civil now, but he also comes from a heavy, extensive criminal defense background. And I'm sure you heard in the announcement, Kuman also is from the district attorney's office. So all of us from the criminal background or criminal cases is what we're touching on. And I just wanted to kind of connect some of the dots between Mr. Exum and Human, what he was saying about really it was personal development is what I've heard, and what I really believe too is, so in law school, they don't teach you how to do that client intake call. Whether even if you're not criminal, even if you do civil, but that first intake call, or even if you're a DA, how you have that call with the district attorney's office or a victim of a crime. So these are people who have been through traumatic events, experiencing it in different ways. And you, the attorney, the person doing that, handling that call, deciding, you know, if you're a DA, how to charge, if you're defense, how you're going to defend. A lot has to do with that intake call, something they don't talk about at all in law school or anywhere. And so mentoring is a huge component, I think, necessary for the practice of a law that they've implemented much more in the medical profession. Human, you were touching on as well about how there's more of a residency. We don't have that in the practice of law. You pass the bar and you're out. There you go. You're ready to take a case. So the day-to-day of it is listening to clients call who don't really have a case, but they're upset, and you have to explain that they don't have a case or don't have a defense, or the offer is good that the district attorney is presenting. You read a lot of police reports. Here's a fact I really never could have foreseen, which is how much time I spend redacting police reports, which is blocking out the date of birth, the address, someone's phone number before I give the clients their reports. That's just a personal policy that I'm really good at. That I believe I can't have a reasonable conversation with my client if we're both not operating off the same facts and police reports to do so. But I spend copious amounts of time redacting the reports. I do have a secretary now. I am one of those people that I started trying to build a team, and look, I had problems with that. You don't always get the teammate right off the bat. They'll steal from you. Miss deadlines, miss calendar stuff that at some point can make you go bonkers and just think, oh, I'm just better off doing this myself. So those are some of my experiences of why it actually took me a while, because after I got burned a couple times, I wasn't really willing to put myself out there and bring on someone. So I'm one of those people that has been a one-woman show. Not because I didn't try to build a team, but because I just got burned a couple times and then I got bitter. So then I just figured you got to do a job right. You know, you got to do it yourself. Right. But I agree, you can drop balls and burn out by doing that. So you got to find that happy medium. But since everyone seemed to talk about personal development, I want to really stress on why that's so important. Again, as a criminal defense attorney or as a prosecutor, you know, we handle a variety of different cases. They could be your simple DUI. They could be a complicated DUI where someone died from it and a family is traumatized over that. A family who now has a loved one who's facing life in prison versus the victim's family who just lost someone. They died because of this. Someone was drinking and driving. And then they go up, you know, in scale. We have dumpster diving type cases. We identity theft, your mail gets stolen, white collar crimes, embezzlement. And then we have robberies and we have gangs. and we have prostitution, and we have human trafficking, and we have child pornography. And look, just because I'm a criminal defense attorney, any criminal defense attorney will tell you, not a fan of child pornography. So if you're going to go into the criminal defense arena, you need to think of things like that. And even if you choose the prosecutor side because you feel, oh, well, at least, I want to go after people like that, do not underestimate the effect of what child pornography, because in order to be a good, effective lawyer in your case, you do have to know your facts of your case. You do have to look at the evidence. And sometimes the evidence is ugly, it's bloody, it's things you couldn't possibly think of. I mean, anyone that's worked in the trenches of criminal courts will tell you, you just can't make this stuff up. You just can't. I mean, I have had over a dozen clients have a massive convulsion, epileptic seizure right in front of me. No one told me that could happen in my career. No one could tell me that would happen mid-prelim while they're in the chair having this. So a lot happens. The one things I love about my job is you can't predict what happens. There are unpredictable things that happen in this profession and career every single day. And I'm actually kind of a creature of habit. So maybe that's why, but I was that way pre-law. So having a life, having stability, if you don't have it, create it, figure it out. It's one of the things you're gonna need to figure out to carry you through this profession. Absolutely. Because of the type of cases you're going to touch. And even if you don't even go into criminal law, even if you go into civil, you have accidents. You'd be surprised what happens in family court. They have a lot of domestic violence issues. Probate court, I'm not saying it's super exciting, but they can have a lot of drama there. You can be exposed to, well, without a doubt, you're exposed to other people's drama. That's usually what results into a lawsuit. And you're the hero, hopefully, whatever side, you're there to make it better in some way. And that will affect you. Do not underestimate how your caseload will affect you. And that is really, I think, one of the key points Mr. Exum was pointing out about have a life, get a life, get outside. You cannot carry the weight of these cases and not have an outlet, a healthy outlet. I've done some mock interviews at law school, since one of the questions I ask them is, what is your healthy outlet here in law school? I'm a straight shooter. I hope anyone can be that back. And I had a student say, well, I'm just going to be honest with you. Please do. He said, well, I smoke like a pack and a half a day. That's my outlet. And I said, okay, well, I just need you to know that when you become a lawyer and you get sent out to trial, you should expect you're smoking 2 packs a day. Easy. If you haven't solved that problem and figured that out, it will not get better as a lawyer. If you are stressed in law school and you have not figured out a way to manage that stress, yoga, meditation, counseling, golfing, sports, there's a long list of outlets, and you probably need more than one. And that one outlet you do have is most likely not going to carry you through your entire career either, because we as humans, we change and our needs change. So be aware of this, that there's a reason why as a lawyer, we actually have multiple names too. We're not just lawyer, we're known as an advisor, a counselor, an esquire. Why? Because as the speaker said before, sometimes we're social workers. I mean, I happen to actually like having those tough conversations most of the time with my clients who, what I say, they're using that stinking thinking that got them into the mess that they're in. And then they're using that stinking thinking to try to get out of it. Like, well, the witness said I had a green shirt on. My shirt was blue. I mean, I got this. And I'm thinking, weren't your fingerprints on the gun? Didn't they have security of your car and a profile of your face with the same blue jeans and black shoes with white stripes, right? So you want to go to trial off of the variance. Maybe the witness was colorblind. So these are tough conversations you have to have with your clients without being a dump truck, which is the nickname defense attorneys get if they, settle a case. Sometimes settling a case is in the client's best interest. That's why sometimes cases settle. There are also dump truck lawyers out there. Don't be one of them. Get into this practice because you care of it. Whatever side you're on, civil, criminal, prosecution, defense, don't get in it just for money. And if you're getting into criminal, you're not getting in for large money anyway as well. Let me just share that tip with you as well, is you're never going to get that multi-million-dollar settlement as a criminal defense attorney. So if that's somewhere in your dream, just make sure that your dreams are realistic and you should not be practicing criminal law. You can save someone's life. You can change their life, the direction of their life forever. You can save someone's freedom, and that is far more than money. And society needs good lawyers. They need good, honest prosecutors that actually care and don't look at people as just a case number. And that's also what a defense attorney is there to do. And so again, going back to personal development, your clients, civil, criminal, whatever side, they don't just start talking to you about their trauma that they've experienced. They don't just start like, oh, so you probably want to know that I was kidnapped when I was 4 years old and then I was molested, and like, did you want to know that? They don't do that. You have to pry this information out of people. People have trauma, and the way you as a lawyer, no matter what side, no matter what you're arguing, you have to know you're an advocate for your client or victim or whoever it is. And in order to be your best advocate, you need to know that person and not just what got them in the mess. You need to understand them, and you need to ask the tough questions, because you know what? They're not going to offer it to you. And that is where psychology, getting out and talking to people, DAs are different. Every DA has a different personality. Judges are different. Judges have personalities. People get moody. So keep all this in mind. The most personal development you could do right now would be one of the greatest tips you can give yourself, whether it be psychologically, learning how to speak persuasively, learning not how to lose your temper, learning how to figure out different personality types. A DA is going to have a different, this DA over this DA. Clients are going to have different personality types as well. So I hope that gives you a little view into the crazy, wacky world of lawyering. I love it. Wouldn't change a thing, but don't kid yourself. If you're going to law school, you're not lazy. You're ready to roll up your sleeves and do some hard work. But I promise you're going to do some more hard work when you get out there and you're in the trenches. So don't forget to play hard too. That's it.
Thank you so much. Before we get to our last speaker, I want to remind everybody who's watching that if you have questions during the presentations, please go ahead and submit them using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And while you're doing that or finding that, I'll introduce our last speaker, Judge Randy Staman from the Riverside County Superior Court.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I'm going to take a little bit different tack. First of all, I need to tell everyone that when I spoke last at UCR, and it was in person, obviously pre-COVID, and I'll tell you, I'm old now. It was probably 25 plus years ago. That ended up with an attorney punching me on the stage. So we were speaking, and I referred a question to, quote, an older attorney. Maybe we should let her, an older attorney, answer the question. And she turned around and socked me. So it was quite the start to the presentation. Also, I probably am the only attorney of the three, and now I'm a judge, that is going to talk about my life more as a civil practitioner. So really basic, you have civil law and criminal law. Civil being anything that doesn't end or cannot possibly put you in jail, in essence. And there's a lot of different areas. Probably the day-to-day would be best explained by how I got to that stage. I'm from Riverside, and I didn't really know I was going to be an attorney. I went to UC Irvine, and I found that a few of the legal classes I took, I really, truly enjoyed them. And I did well in them. And next thing you know, I was applying to law school and got accepted to law school, went to law school. And they tell you there's 3 or 4 different kinds of law. There's, law school law, there's bar law for the bar exam to become an attorney, and then there's real law. I passed the bar exam. It's a really horrendous test, and the studying for it is a horrendous experience. I was really lucky to get a job. I came out of school in the last recession. I won't say that Daryl's any older than me, but we're from the same school, and we were within a couple of years of each other, okay? And so I came out in a couple of recessions ago. I was really lucky to get a job at that point. The first job I had was with a firm for Riverside or Inland Empire Standards. It was a fairly large firm. It was 58 attorneys when I started, and there were 3 different offices. During that recession, though, people got laid off. And so law can be affected by the economy. There was a lot less business going on, so there was less civil lawsuits. In other words, there were less auto accidents with trucks, for instance, or less business deals that had fallen out. So the economy affected the firm I was with. And the 6th day I was there, I watched 2 attorneys. I wasn't even on the letterhead yet. The 2 attorneys over me get laid off. And then a couple more got laid off. And by random chance during that whole process, I survived the cuts because, one, as we've all talked about now, I was able to talk to people. And also, I tell any less experienced attorneys, I was able to make rain. In other words, making rain in law firm standards, you're able to bring in business. And if you're able to bring in business for any law firm, it's a great asset to them and to you. And you have individuals which will grind and grind and grind and bill out hours. And I hope you've heard of hourly billables or billable hours. You have to account for your minutes. That's a really strange thing to do, going from undergrad, then to law school, and then to a firm or even on your own. In civil law, you're billing usually by the minute, and it's an increment, 6-minute increments, which is a crazy experience. You're literally recording your time and billing for it by the hour. So at any rate, I joined this firm and I made it through several cuts. And then one day I thought, I really eventually would like to go out on my own. I didn't care for the huge law firm experience. And I think you start thinking about that when you're in law school or even sooner. Am I comfortable working with kind of a big corporation? Do I want to be with a small business? In other words, a couple of attorneys, or do I really want to be out on my own? And I hadn't thought that out yet. And I think we've all talked about the fact that you don't want to make the same mistakes perhaps we've made or take a hard road to some very simple lessons. Start thinking about that. What type of law do you want to practice? There's areas out there that you don't even know exist. So I randomly went to a charity function and I sat next to a guy who was a sole practitioner. He was a one-man show and he wanted an associate. And that just random encounter, 2 weeks later, I went and gave the firm notice and I went to work with another attorney. He was a senior partner, had practiced forever, was a great attorney, had an amazing personality, and was able to bring in a lot of clients. And you combine that personality with amazing skills as a lawyer, it's a winning combination. He was also a good business person. And I was with him for less than a year. And one day I gave a presentation, and my dad actually was associated with the university and dealt with horticulture. So of all things, he worked with landscape contractors and people in the tree industry. And most attorneys, I think, will tell you they've handled a barking dog case, a neighbor dispute of some type, either for free or for a friend or whatnot. Well, because of my background in horticulture and trees, I started getting all these crazy neighbor disputes. Started working with contractors. I went down to San Diego and I gave a presentation one night just on risk management. I've been practicing law for like 2.5 years. And I didn't even know what I was talking about. I had prepared, but I hadn't really had a lot of experience in that area. And by chance, I got 8 or 9 cases out of it in that one presentation, or clients. And I didn't know what I didn't know yet. I went out and I gave notice the next morning to open my own law firm. And that's an interesting thing to do, because we talk about you're not really prepared coming out of law school. I still wasn't prepared. I had experience in the law, not vast, certainly not as a business person. I wish, and I'd encourage all of you to learn business skills as well as people skills. Whatever you do in life, you're going to need some business background. And I would encourage you to expose yourself to that in whatever way possible. I opened my own law firm a couple weeks later. And I had no staff, obviously. Really didn't have enough business to work past noon or so. And so I would work till noon. I had a friend that was fresh out of the military. We would go play around. I'd work for a couple hours. I would go ahead and write articles to publicize my business and just about areas of the law. And that all worked out for me. Before you know it, my business or my client base picked up. And I was able to talk more. I gave presentations on my area of law, and clients soon were coming in. That was really nice after a year or two, whatever, being slow. I encourage you all to also think about not only just the areas of law you go into, but if you're going to go into civil law, in other words, not criminal, nothing where you can go to jail. Someone can go to jail and lose their freedom, but rather another area. I would encourage all of you to think about, can I turn some love of my life, either habit and something you enjoy, into what you could do for a living, that area of law. And once again, I was really lucky. I found a niche. On the other hand, and I've told this story a number of times, and it's happened in other people, I feel it's my success. I was with another attorney who was working for a huge law firm. And he was very into martial arts. And I encouraged him, I don't know any attorneys that are into martial arts that actually focus on that. Before you knew it, and he's now very successful. He had a law office that catered to the owners of martial arts studios or dojos. And he now serves them pretty much exclusively. That's his practice. So once again, it's going back to what you love in life or whatnot. On a day-to-day basis, my practice was pretty interesting. When I worked for a large firm, once again, 58 attorneys, 3 offices, and that's small by a lot of standards. There are many law firms that have in excess of 1,200 attorneys, and they have offices all over California, all over America, and all over the world. So by standards, that's a small firm still. I did a lot of discovery where you'd send out written requests to the other side for facts or documents. I did a lot of depositions, where you have question and answer periods under oath of the other side. I second chaired some trials. So you do a lot of the entry level work. The bigger the firm, the less likely you are to be exposed to a broad area. You tend to specialize in not the type of law, but rather the stage of law. So you'll be doing those depositions, those questions and answers, periods under oath, live, or these days, by Zoom or some other software. Were you asking perhaps a plaintiff, in the case, the person doing the suing, about what happened during that day the accident occurred, or the business transaction went south? So I did that. When I went to work for a smaller firm, all of a sudden my spectrum got a little bit broader. Now I was going from the inception of a lawsuit, civil, all the way through trial. And that was great. Now I was getting experience and preparing myself to go out on my own. And with a smaller law firm and my practice in particular, you were doing all types of areas of law. It wasn't just, let's say, prosecution or defense, but the attorney that I worked for, we were doing land use issues. And this isn't so much anymore, but we were doing land use issues. We were incorporating companies. We were doing almost anything and everything, with the exception, no family law and no criminal. So I was in all types of courts across California, did all types of areas of law, really neat. And then I went out on my own. On a day-to-day basis on my own, I was a business person, which once again is hard. You either have that business acumen or you don't. Try to learn it if you can. Go out and I would do the business person. I was doing with buying malpractice insurance, for instance, and getting quotes for that. I was kind of a general practitioner at first. I did all types of real estate. I did business and land use. I was doing whatever walked through the door. Once again, with the exception of family and criminal. And when I would sit there, people asked me what I do all day. Well, as a sole practitioner at that point in time, I would tell people, oh, I'm on the phone 80% of my day, or on the computer 80% of my day. I talk to clients. I'm working with opposing counsel. I'm researching. I'm preparing memos, research memos. I'm writing briefs for the court to read. And then you have that small portion of your day or week where you're actually in court. It's certainly not like TV or the movies. But that's not a bad thing. And I truly enjoyed writing. I enjoyed dealing with clients. But on a day-to-day basis, that's what I found I did. And I was in court maybe 20% of the time. So on a, once again, day-to-day practical basis. My suggestions are like other people's. First of all, I would start, and if you can, start exposing yourself to the legal community around you as well. And if you're an undergrad or thinking about law school at some other point in your life, go to the barristers, for instance, we talked about at the introduction, which is just less experienced attorneys or younger attorneys, and they will welcome you with open arms. Come to their meeting, look them up, and they'll tell you about law school. They'll tell you about your career and what you do on a day-to-day basis. You can go to the Riverside, the Riverside County Bar Association has monthly meetings. They will be elated to have someone who's thinking about being a lawyer there. Most of us will help you out in any way possible. At any rate, with that, my last bit of advice, much like other people, is to lead a very balanced life, not outside of law. And that goes in all different areas. So, you know, you're constantly juggling at different points of your career, your family, your friends, your professional career, and also your own health and well-being. And that's a constant juggle. Try to keep that juggling process as successful as possible. I tell people, and I have openly said this a number of times, I'm an organ transplant patient. I knew that was coming down the pike for me, so I tried to keep my family and close friends dear to me, close to me. That can't always be done at all times, and your focus will change at all different times. But once again, lead a balanced life, no matter what stage or what your career is. With that, we'll go ahead and I let you take it over.
All right, thank you so much. Again, everyone, we have some questions on the docket, which is great. We have some that were submitted yesterday as well, but if you have others that come to you during this discussion, please go ahead and submit them. I want to start with a couple of questions that sort of speak to this broader theme of the human side of practicing law and what it really takes, and that you frequently don't see represented. So the first question in this area was, how do you sort of desensitize yourself from seeing your client get a hard punishment? Do you just not build interpersonal relationships with your clients? How do you recommend handling that dynamic? And I'll put this to the group, anybody can answer.
Daryl, you
Wait,
want?
Lord.
No, I was saying
Go, Lord.
should go. No, Mr. X.
Okay. Right. It's unfortunately, it's one of those real things that it just takes time. The only way you can truly insulate yourself is by not caring. And once you start caring, you're going to feel something. How you protect yourself is you do the best job you can. You go out and you work hard to learn the law, to learn different techniques. You go to seminars, the good seminars, as I like to call them, where you get excellent lawyers from all over the country to teach you how to do this work. And so it helps you to, one, have less of those situations, and two, to know you did your best. But as with anything, there's going to be times where you feel it. And it gets a little easier, but it never goes away.
Lori, do you have anything to add, or not to put you on the spot, but since you also work in a field like this?
I would agree with everything he said. I would just add that, look, if you're going to get attached, you're also going to get hurt sometimes. And you're going to feel pain. And you're going to shed a few tears. And you're going to pick yourself back up again. And it's part of the process. And when you get to the point that you don't care, that will reflect in your work product too, that you don't care about that. Clients feel that too. So you cannot get attached to everyone, but even no matter how hard you try, you will find a case or two that just sucks you in for whatever reason. And you will feel it. And that's why you need an outlet. And you're going to have, there's a process. And that's why personal development is the key. Don't think that stuff just happens.
Great. Next question, getting again, it's for this work-life balance or the need to have personal development in other spaces, is a two-parter. The first is it true that being an attorney makes it hard to have a family due to how time-consuming the profession can be? And the second part of that is, does having a family limit your potential as an attorney?
I'm going to just jump in and say as a female, yes. And I don't even have kids, but I definitely know for sure as a female, yes.
I would take that and get back into the camera. So what I found when I was a young associate with a firm, my hours were gobbled up for the first couple of years. I didn't have a family at that point in time. I know that being a sole practitioner or with a small firm would allowed me to have it's not a lot of free time. I was able to attend, let's put it this way, every one of my son and daughter's games. I went on the field trips. I did all that. I had a lot of flexibility. I wasn't working less. I was working different hours. So I didn't feel that limited me. It just made me have to adjust and have a little bit more freedom. I don't have that freedom now as a judge. No matter how early I get to work, I'm not leaving any earlier. So I don't have that freedom, but I thought as a small firm person or as a sole practitioner, you have freedom to work with your family and have fun.
If I can just chime in real quick too. From what I've seen from my colleagues, from private practice and also in the public practice, it can be difficult. It just kind of goes back to everything that we've said earlier is in prioritizing and figuring out what is more important to you and that stage of your career and that stage of your life. I've seen people that were, in the civil arena, billable hours of 2,000 plus hours a year, and they didn't have time for anything. And once they realized that they did want to have a family, they realized that something's got to give. And unfortunately, having both wasn't going to work out for them. So they decided that either they had to change firms or change practice, do something different, because for them, starting a family was more important. So it really just comes down to what's important to you and what you want to make a priority. But it all goes back to balancing life and figuring out what's the most important thing for you at that stage of your life and that stage of your career. But you don't have to stop practicing. You may just want to change your practice.
Thank you. Lori, I'm going to put you back on the spot again because you said something that I was told when I was an undergrad thinking about going to law school, which is you're a woman, even if you don't have children, it's going to be harder for you or there are going to be hurdles. So could you, or do you mind elaborating a little bit what your experience has been or maybe what you've seen, just so there's some clarity as to what you...
Oh, of course, sure. So, you're going to get pregnant and then that's going to affect your body and then you're going to need some time off work. And so leading up to that, you generally are not going to be taking the heaviest case. You're going to be put on a lighter load. Some agencies call it the mommy track. And I learned that as a baby lawyer. Someone told me, because I actually thought I was going to have kids when I started in this career. And I was like, so what does that look like? What does one do? And they were like, oh, they'll just put you on the mommy track. That means so you won't really do trials, you'll do calendar and then you can leave and, they'll find other assignments. You just, you won't be that kick butt attorney in the trenches doing big stuff in the deep end. And that was just kind of like, yeah, be lucky you're here swimming and playing in this little league anyway. That was kind of my intro. And just based on observation, there are certainly women who do it, but you're not doing it as a single mom. They're doing it because they have amazing husbands and they have an amazing support group around them. That's how they're getting it done. And the saying's always been the same. It takes a village to raise a child. So start formulating your village. And that means you got to contribute to other people's villages. But you're going to have the kid and then you're going to be torn. Are you going to miss events? You're going to have to ask yourself that. And in general, most moms don't want to miss those events on a regular basis. And I'm not saying you for sure will, but it's something you will need to consider. And once you start missing 1 or 2 or 3, guess what? Management's got to make a decision. And I'm not saying it works like that always for everyone. I am just telling you that stereotype exists because that stereotype is there. And I don't know. I don't even really know exactly what the solution is to that. I just can acknowledge that it exists, and to be ignorant of that fact would just be going through with your head in the sand, and I don't recommend doing that.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to a question that more deals with passion versus potential income and earning power. We have a question from a student who writes, would you advise future law students to pursue law in a field that they're passionate about or one that will pay better?
Yeah, that's an easy question. And I'll tell you why. Because I can answer that question with an example. I have a degree in chemistry and physics. When I was in law school, there was a great firm that came to my school. They were patent lawyers. And they explained to me that back in 1990 or so, that patent firm paid over $100,000 to lawyers after a year of practice. That's the equivalent of about $280 now. I did that for a summer. Horrible, horrible, horrible work. Just horrible work. I got to work for federal defenders for about half a summer. My life opened up. And I saw that if you pursue the thing that you love, because that's the reason I became a lawyer, what they do. And once I pursued that, what you'll see is being happy is, I hate to say this, but being happy is way more important than the money. It's way more important than the money. People drop dead, people lose relatives, people lose spouses, and you want to be as happy as you can. It's way more important. Now, if you find the mix, money and happiness, then you hit the lottery. And that's the real trick, finding the mix. That's the real trick. But you got to pursue your passion. Life is about passion. You don't want to be old one day and say, I never pursued my passion. Pursue your passion.
I'll go back in the picture. I would agree with Daryl. The fact of the matter is, we talked a lot about burnout. You will burn out if you are just pursuing it for money. You only have so much vacation time if you're allowed to take it. And understand, we talked about billable hours, at least on the civil side where I came from. And I think it was Homan who said 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours is not enough these days in a lot of firms. So you picture billing and how many hours it takes to actually bill 2,000 hours a year. You might make an awful lot of money, but your dry cleaners are going to be in your building to make it easier so you don't have to go out of the building. Your car repair place comes to the building, so you don't have to leave the building to go get your car repaired. Your supermarket is in the building, so you don't have to leave the building because you can bill and bill and bill. So, and that's a difficult thing. That's a difficult thing to do year after year. And so once again, my feeling would be, you pursue your passion. And as Gerald just said, I feel like I've achieved over the last, I don't know how many years, most of my career now, a good balance. There was a time when that balance wasn't always so good, and I was very concerned about the student loans that I owed, which were $80,000 back in 1992 dollars. And that makes it a little more difficult of a choice. But once again, I go with the passion.
I'm going to just jump in right after what Judge Staman said. I think from talking to kids recently, I think the law school debt is in excess of coming up on $400,000 is kind of the number I've been hearing lately. And if I'm not right, I can be corrected, but $400,000 kind of following you around is not, a little bit of money. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with the other two gentlemen and say, chase the money and find your passion while you chase the money. Because the problem is you don't know what you're going to like until you do it. So why not at least chase the money until you figure out what you like?
That's the perfect actually opening for another question that was asked during Lori's presentation when she said, criminal law doesn't make you millions of dollars. We had a student ask, if criminal law doesn't make you millions, what type of law does? And I guess for those who are hoping to find passion and financial success overlapping, where would you recommend, or what would you recommend they specialize in?
Well, since I said chase the money, let me throw in this. And the problem is it's not just the passion that's chasing the money. If you want to go out there and just make millions, that can be done like we all talked about. The putting in all the horrible hours and all that stuff. But I think regardless of what field of law you practice, whether it's criminal or civil, and obviously in civil, there's numerous branches of area that you can pick and become a specialty in. I think the money will come, and making those millions would come once you become an expert in your field. I think once you are have grasped your area of the law and have become expert, people are going to seek you out, and the money will come. I think it doesn't matter what area of law you practice. I think it's the kind of lawyer you become that will bring in those millions.
Great. So we had a couple of questions come in yesterday that related to how you became interested in the particular law that you ultimately ended up practicing. So I just would like to pitch this broadly to the group.
I'll jump in. So I've always been a fighter for the underdog. Like in school, I was always going up and talking to the new kid in class. And I thought it took a special person to be a criminal defense attorney. I knew that before I even went to college, and I felt I was that special person, that I knew how to not judge someone on an act. I felt that I got along with people, and that I'm good at telling people stories. And I wanted to, I knew most lawyers will tell you we were smart enough to make it to med school, but we hated math, so we went to law school. So I knew I was going to do something to make some money and do something, get an education. And I agree. Man, like I can't tell you with the debt right now that that's exactly the way to go. One, law school, and two, yeah, I totally understand why you go chase the money at least first to get that debt paid off. There were times that county workers were getting benefits to their law school payments, but last I checked, that's not going on, right? Yeah. There was a time being that there was a benefit to being a county government worker, which I can see why they would do that, is that just like, being in the military, you get a discount or credit towards your student loans for each time, years of service you give to the county agencies, but that doesn't even exist anymore. So, but I won't deny that following your passion, you'll get burnout. So If you're going to chase the money, figure out how to tap into your passion. If you haven't figured out how to tap into your passion, there's a reason why you hear the saying over and over again, money doesn't buy you happiness. And sadly, it takes most people to get a ton of it to realize, because when you don't have it, you think, oh, you're just saying that because you don't have it. But then when you get it, you realize, oh, I see what they're saying. You still have problems. You still have emotions. You still have, figure out those first. And fighting for someone's freedom, there's something to be said about that. And so I don't knock anyone that goes into that either. Pass up the mic to someone else.
I will. So I'm a judge now. I've been a judge for about 4 years, but I became, as we discussed, I became a sole practitioner, and I fell into my niche, which was these really high-end, bizarre neighbor disputes and then landscape stuff and whatnot. That came with me starting as a general practitioner, hoping to get business someday. And I became, as Homan said, I became an expert in my area. And I did it by, one, seeking out those type of cases, by writing. And I felt the more that you write or speak on a subject and the better educated you are about a particular subject, people will seek you out and you will become an expert. And I fell into my area and I was really lucky. I thought about, though, I wanted some niche to differentiate myself from other attorneys. And with that niche also came the money, as we just discussed, though. So that was really nice. I all of a sudden was getting paid to go speak on the subject all over the world. And it was a really neat experience. And so I'm very lucky I fell into it, in part by planning, but also by just chance.
Great. So Judge Staman, you're a bit of a novelty for us. We haven't had a judge on one of these panels yet. And so there were a lot of questions about sort of how you became a judge, what the process is. Another question asking, is this a decision that you made? Or did somebody tap you for it? So could you elaborate a little bit sort of how you made that leap?
The process to become a judge is very, very long and difficult. It's at least a couple of year process. I was really lucky. First of all, to becoming a judge, I think some of the best advice I ever got actually was from a local politician who I worked with at one of the firms, and who told me, Randy, you need to do everything within your power every day to do the right thing when you're in court and dealing with other attorneys, and to protect your reputation. And I took that to heart. He was an attorney back then, and now is a well-known politician. And so I think when I did things wrong, and I did things wrong and made mistakes, I told either people I was working for, I told judges, I made a mistake. I was really honest about it, and this will not happen again. And then it didn't happen again. And I protected my reputation. And there was clients that I didn't like working for, but all of us have to do that occasionally. So once again, the protecting reputation, and that gave me, opened up an opportunity to become a judge. I actually didn't think I had the political pull, but I learned that it's not all about political pull. I was really lucky. And so I was, just because I stayed involved in the Bar Association, I stayed involved in the local community. Riverside has treated me really well. So I've been the president of different sports clubs. I've volunteered. I worked with the Bar Association. I know that all of us are active with that. In fact, I met Lori through the Bar Association. And I didn't try to spread myself too thin. I chose my own areas that I wish to seek or be involved in around the community. I looked at becoming a judge, and the process is pretty interesting. First, you put your application in. The application currently, because I just looked at it, believe it or not, yesterday for someone, consists of 70 to 80 questions. It's extensive. During your entire legal career, you're supposed to go back and look and list just about every significant case you've had in your career. I hadn't kept records of that, so it's a pretty difficult process. I put my application in, and once that happens, the governor's office, if they're interested in you, will then go out and they have individuals that speak to local attorneys and local judges about you, and they find out about your reputation within the community, whether you've done a good job for your clients or know the law, and we'll look into whether you have a reputation for being honest or not. Frankly, one of the most important things to this governor, I think every other governor, was always having good judicial demeanor. So you have the personality where you're fairly even keeled on the bench. You're not going to get ruffled. You're not going to be angry. And so judicial demeanor, as they put it, is very important. I put my application in, and I started getting calls that the governor's office was asking about me through the public. That was really nice to hear. It's a long process. You finally go to a commission where you meet with 2 commissioners, and that represent a larger commission. And you're interviewed, it's tape recorded or videoed, and you're just asked about your significant cases you've had, why you want to be a judge, and a bunch of other things. And also negative comments about you are brought up if there are people that have put in negative comments. The legal community is asked about it in writing. So I regularly get, and Daryl, I'm sure, and Lori, Homan as well, have gotten emails from the state saying, we're investigating this person. We'd like you to find out and give us comment about them. You go through that process, and after that process, depending on the number of judge openings available, you'll wait. It might be quick, it might be long for the governor's office to physically contact you to have what they call the governor's appointment, judicial appointment secretary will interview you. It's an unnerving process. So now it's being done by Zoom. When I did it, I went to the Los Angeles the State Bar's building in Los Angeles County. Pretty interesting process. You go up an elevator to a completely empty top floor of the building. You are told to sit on a couch. There's a door. Do not ring the doorbell. Sit on the couch and wait. You wait about an hour. You're interviewed, and the interview is a long process as well. Once again, going deep into maybe some policy questions, your background again, and I think at that point you're being strongly considered. If you leave the interview and it's a difficult point, you look out that window and you think, I've reached the pinnacle of my career here at this point, and I hope the interview goes well. After the interview, it can be anywhere from immediate to months and months and months to find out and to actually be appointed. You'll notice the appointments are typically in the newspaper, internet. They're announced by the governor's office. I got the call while I was on vacation, which was a really nice thing, right before I got on a plane to come home. And I think people on the plane were wondering why my wife and I were jumping up and down as we were about to board the plane. But it was a super interesting process. I'd go more into detail some other time, but great process.
Thank you. Quite a few of you talked about sort of this, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of reading. It's not just being in a courtroom or interacting with clients. And so we had a couple of questions about how do you stay motivated and focused with, there being so much paperwork and reading, and when you are researching for a case, where are you going to get that information, and how do you know when you've done enough research in an area?
Well, I can start. As far as the reading and the research goes, I think I may have stopped reading for leisure because I do so much for work. It's kind of blurred. So sometimes when I have done to some vacation downtime, I do read for leisure. But whenever we can, like Mr. Exum said earlier, he gets up early in the morning and kind of decides, do I do the gym thing or do I start prepping for my cases? It really depends on what you are researching. Some things, like Mr. Exum said earlier, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the stuff, I'd say a good 80%, if not more, has been already researched and has already been litigated. So it's just a matter of finding it. When you become a lawyer, there are numerous tools available to you for research purposes. There's research manuals, there's case law. the big difference between my practice as a public, as a public employee working for the district attorney's office, I have a lot more resources that are available to me that my office provides to me. So I don't have the business aspect of it that I have to worry about. Can I afford to get this practice guide, that practice guide? And, Ms. Myers and Mr. Exum can tell you, and even Judge Staman, a lot of these resources are not cheap. Like if you want to do a Westlaw research, it just depends on how much they're searching. When you go to law school, they actually give you, it's almost it's horrible, but they give you access to Westlaw and Lexis for free. So the whole time you're in law school, you get complete complete access to Westlaw and Access. As soon as you come out of law school, they're like, oh, well, that's not a problem. We can still give you access, but you want basic access, it's $100. You want that full access that we gave you back in law school, it's like $1,000 a month. So that's where the private practice and the business stuff really comes into play. That's not so much for me and other, lawyers that are in the public arena, like the public defender's office, my office, and other, and even on the federal side, they get resources because, the county or the state or the feds are giving them substantial resources to access. Private practice is a completely different arena and a completely different beast as how that goes. And I'll turn that over to our private practice folks, because they can tell you that's completely different as far as access and cost go.
I'm going to be super quick because I know we're ending here real quick. So I just want to add that, yes, everything you said, the expenses are a lot, but hey, you know what? Sometimes reading stuff is actually the exciting part of our job. Reading the police report, reading something, finding, oh, this is wrong. This is exactly what I'm going to base my whole case on. So sometimes reading actually gets us excited about where we're going. On a side note, I can't read personally at all. I only do audiobooks because my eyes are so tired from actual reading. Mr. Exum?
I love audiobooks. I go nowhere without them. Now, I was just going to say that there's a lot of things out there that you can still do for free. There's a lot of things out there that you can still do at an extremely lower cost than the $1,000 a month. I agree, but and again, as I said before, build a team of lawyers and non-lawyers and get together with them, because the non-lawyers are going to help you understand the human part of the facts, and the lawyers are going to tell you, hey, I did a case like that, or so-and-so did a case like that, and then you search it out. I have done maybe 50% of the research on all my cases that way, and it saves a lot of money.
And I would add that in addition to speaking with other attorneys about it, you're going to have books, much like textbooks, that condense things for you and at least point you in the right direction. And as Lori was saying, some of that reading is super exciting. Like all of a sudden you go from case, you're reading these cases one after the other, and all of a sudden you discover the case is that's going to help out and help you and your client. And sometimes those are amazing cases. And I believe that's part of the reason I got my original job, was I was just stumbled by going through the right direction and came across that magical case. And that magical case saved a client. And as a result of that law firm that I pulled a rabbit out of a hat on the case was the one that ended up hiring me. So the research, so you're not going to have problems on that type of focus. Occasionally you will, but I also enjoy writing. So the writing I truly enjoy. And so the research and writing, yes, it can be boring, but oftentimes it is really interesting and fun.
Great. So we are at time. I want to thank everybody who attended and for submitting questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to everyone's, but hopefully you found something in the Q&A helpful. We try to sort of touch on different aspects throughout. And thank you, of course, to our panelists so much for joining us and taking time to talk to our students. We will, with prior panels, we followed up with the panelists and have asked if they'd be willing to field student questions offline. So we'll do the same here. So attendees, tomorrow you'll get sort of a thank you from Zoom for attending. And if the panelists, no pressure, are willing to talk to you offline, we'll include a way for you to get a hold of them. But with that said, I will adjourn this, our final webinar, and thank you again to Rcba for being our partners in this. We really appreciate it.